Hello, this is Mark Wildman of Wildman Athletica, and today we will be talking about a basic history of heavy club swinging. Clubbing is very, very old. So old that it's probably older than actually civilization. If you look back throughout history and you look at the ancient stories of history, let's start with Hercules. Hercules killed the lion, Modian lion, with a club. There's a very big club. It's a symbol of strength. If you go and you look at the Hercules statue in the center of Florence in Italy, it's a really big dude with a club. If you're wandering through a museum anywhere in the world and you see a giant statue of a really muscly guy who's got a giant club, that's Hercules. That's how you can always tell it's him. Clubs have been symbols of strength throughout history. Further back than that, Gilgamesh. Story of Gilgamesh, which is, I believe, the oldest surviving work of literature in history. Once again, major use of clubs. That story is a story between a king and a wild man. Clubs play heavily in that story. All the way through history, if you go to the British Museum in the center of London and you walk through all of the ancient exhibits, you will see pictures of big guys with tall hats on, and they all have some kind of club-looking object in their hand. Oftentimes they look like maces. That's because they were. The symbol of the king was a scepter. Scepters over time became smaller and fancier because kings stopped actually leading wars on the battlefield, and they started doing it from fancy palaces. But the scepter is a small fancy club. If you further back you go in history, the more club-like that thing becomes. Clubs have been a symbol of strength literally before we had writing. It's a really good excuse or a really good reason to think, man, why shouldn't we do that in the modern world? If they were doing that before they had writing, they thought that was a great idea then. It worked for them then, it's probably gonna work for us now. Moving forward through history, through culture, let's say Persian wrestlers use, I believe, gadas and meals. Gada is, I believe, an Indian word. They are versions of maces and clubs. All traditional forms of weightlifting, pretty much everywhere, is club swinging of some type. Barbelling really did not get invented and really refined until the last 40 to 70 years. So barbelling is brand new. Clubbing is older than actual history. People have been doing it for a long time. If you go back and you look at pictures from West Point in the 1880s, you will notice all those guys are training with clubs. It was kind of forgotten in the West for a long time. British military, when they went to India, sometime in the 1800s, started noticing that all the warriors in India were training with clubs. They brought it back to Europe. They started training with heavy clubs and light clubs. Heavy clubs, also known as fancy club swinging in the European tradition, are small light clubs. I don't happen to have any small light clubs on hand, but you'll see people doing fancy movements with clubs in order to increase the strength of their shoulders, wrists, and elbows for beating the shit out of other people that they don't like. You can find videos of it on YouTube. You can find historical videos. You can find kind of a bad thing, but the Hitler Youth did it too. You can find videos of it literally everywhere throughout history. In America, we really forgot about it, mostly because of football and World War II. So we were doing all of that stuff through World War I, heavy swinging, light swinging of club bells, lifting of kettlebells, all these other things, up until somewhere around World War II. World War II, the world went absolutely batshit crazy, and we did not have the time necessary to teach people how to do those things. So the military made training much shorter, down to like the 6-week mark that you see in many militaries today. Take a bunch of guys, get rid of all the really technical warrior stuff, and just teach them how to run and carry heavy shit and shoot guns. After all those guys came back out of the military, they did all that stuff. So in the modern context, we get the idea that we have in modern American fitness, which is push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups. Probably not the best way to train for the long term, but that's the way we think of training now a lot in America. Now that we kind of, as a culture, have much more information than we used to have access to, we now can look at things and remember that we used to use heavy clubs of all forms, long handles, short handles, every culture, China, Japan. In Japan, I believe the word is called chishi. They tend to be handmade items, a stick shoved into a stone, with a big heavy end on it. Looks like a giant mace or a club. Traditional Japanese martial arts used it. In China, you had golden melon hammer training, which is very rare to find now. Fun fact, kettlebelling that we know now that we got back from Russia in probably about 2001 here in America, in China existed for several thousand years as stone padlock training. They are granite kettlebells. that they used in Shaolin Temple and Wudang. All those things that we can learn from history, if every culture across history, across multiple languages, people who didn't have written language, if they all use this one idea, we can probably look at that and say, they're probably onto something, we should probably do that too. This was Mark Wildman for Wildman Athletica. That was a kind of a brief overview of a history of club swinging throughout history. Get a club bell, learn to use it, be more human.